Good evening, welcome to the Sparks Nature Center for our second speaker series featuring Dan Sproles and Dylan Linnell. I wanted to thank our AmeriCorps volunteer, Aaron Adams, for getting all of this together for me. And Tim Rika for doing the AV tonight. Sparks Nature Center hasn't always been a nature center. It dates back to 1915, and we're in a beautiful old historic building in the floodplain of the Gunpowder River. So, with that in mind, the weather forecast is not calling for rain today, but I wanted to welcome our speakers and look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank everyone for coming here. Theo, the Gunpowder River Keepers, for hosting us. Nature Center for giving us this opportunity to talk about something that we are both very passionate about, right? So in the end, we're just two guys that really like rivers, right? But more importantly, and the topic of tonight is not only do we enjoy rivers, but we enjoy snorkeling in them. And most of the time when people, when we tell this to someone in conversation, or even better yet, we're in the river and someone sees us doing it, they usually react with surprise, a little bit of confusion even sometimes. And so today we want to show you really what it looks like to snorkel in a river, show you some of the gear that allows us to do this, and then sort of through our experiences by putting our faces in the water, looking under the surface, we've actually learned a whole lot that takes it from this fun activity to connects it to a much bigger picture. So one of the themes that we're going to emphasize throughout the night is this idea that we came up with through these experiences called going eyes first. Right, so the emphasis is going to be on, we're going to talk a lot, but we really want to emphasize this idea of looking, seeing, noticing, and just being immersed in observing the river and how beautiful of an environment they present to us. So without further ado, let's just take a look at what river snorkeling looks like. This is 2020, I think our fourth time going in the river. Dylan's first time with a wetsuit, my first time with the GoPro. Didn't learn to get a wetsuit yet. This is the last time I ever snorkeled without one. Right now is when I'm building up the courage to actually get really cold. This is the Gunpowder Gorge area just below the dam. There are big boulder fields that's there. This is down in Cherokee National Forest in Tennessee. This is up in Pennsylvania, the Loyalsock River. That head is Nat. All right, so just a taste of some of the things that you can see and do in a river, right? So that last clip we really like because I think it really captures this idea of going eyes first, right? It's one thing to play around and see what it looks like from the surface, but as soon as your eyes go below that barrier and see what's underneath it, you realize that there is so much more to a river than what you can see from standing on the bank, or even from what you can see from a boat or a kayak, right? When you get under the surface, there is just a world of color and movement and light and rocks and water and fish and animals and all kinds of beautiful things, right? And so here is the Gunpowder here. Down here is Sparks Nature Center. Where we're at now, up here is Pretty Boy Reservoir. And here's a number of the spots that we've kayaked or snorkeled along the river. this whole idea started, actually, during 2020, we kayaked the rivers a lot because we had a lot of free time and a need to get outside. And at one point, Dylan mentioned, hey, Brody here
came from you.
Yeah, said something about bringing a snorkel mask on one of our kayaking trips. I think that'd be kind of cool. So like, yeah, that would be really cool. Let's try it out. And bought the masks, put our faces in the water, and pretty soon afterwards, we were going to the river, not to kayak and snorkel sometimes, but just to snorkel. So I think our first time was down here around Glencoe.
Oh, it was Hillbilly Beach, just south of Hillbilly Beach.
Oh, right, yeah. So just off York Road, Hillbilly Beach. Yep. There's a nice parking area with the beach area there. So we went snorkeling there. And one thing I have to say about the gunpowder is that it is very, very cold. Out of all of the areas we've been to, it is very cold.
We also started in mid-April. Not the best time to get in the water without a wetsuit. It's a little chilly.
Yeah, like I said, we really, really love rivers, and so it wasn't going to stop us, but we quickly adapted, right? Yeah. So what went from just trying it out, 1 to 2 spots, spread all across the area here, and just really found it interesting not to just explore all these different spots for the just to get more visibility on the river, but also say, like, all right, how does the river look differently in each spot? What does it look like underneath? What's the substrate, the river ground? Like, what kind of fish are in different spots? We really noticed that even in what's generally speaking a small area, there can be a lot of variation. And so we were hooked quickly. Started Googling, all right, river snorkeling, what kind of gear can I buy? Because as you can see, this is a story of exploration and a story of Amazon purchases as well. And in Googling river snorkeling, we found that this is actually a thing. There's a big movement out there spearheaded by the U.S. Forest Service down in Cherokee National Forest, Tennessee. And that's when we came across this book here called Hidden Rivers of Southern Appalachia. There's an accompanying documentary with this that really shows how the Forest Service is using river snorkeling to promote their main mission and to get people connected with what it is the Forest Service does for us. Because in a way, although the Forest Service focuses on forests and trees, really at the center of it is providing clean water for our country. And when you put your face in a well-forested river, you can see the difference between water that is healthy and thriving and clean and a river that has been degraded and eroded and is not as great of a place to snorkel. So after getting this book, it had a map of a bunch of different snorkeling spots. So we took I think it was like about a week-long trip down to Tennessee and snorkeled a bunch of the locations in this book. So Little River area, this is around Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and then this is all Cherokee National Forest around it. So there's a guy at the center of this. His name's Casper Cox, and he is like the snorkeling godfather, right? He made this book. He's the one that helped the Forest Service get their program started, takes field trips out for local schools to get them in the river and just really connect them with this resource that the Forest Service is protecting for all of us. So went down there, checked it out, and that's when if we weren't hooked already, that's when it really, really sunk in. And now it was, all right, this is a thing we are doing. We want to put our faces in as many rivers as possible, go eyes first, see what we can see, and just really immerse ourselves in these beautiful environments. So now if we zoom out, to this day, this is the majority of the rivers that we've snorkeled, mainly focused on the Appalachian Range, and down as far as Conestoga River, the border of Georgia and Tennessee, and then as far up as Pennsylvania, the Loyal Sock, and some into Vermont and Maine?
Vermont, Maine, upper New York.
Yeah, and so this started as just a fun thing to do in the river, right? Just a fun activity to go out, enjoy the weather, enjoy a natural resource. But it turned into really a mission, a mindset, a philosophy of just how important these rivers are, how important the natural resource is to protect, and just connect to so much other science and topics. Anything you want to?
Nothing. It's a nail on the head.
Cool. So before getting into some of the stuff we've seen, we got some videos to show you. Let's talk about the gear, because there is a lot of gear. Well, there's only one really piece of gear that you need, but having the right gear makes this a lot more comfortable of an experience.
So mask and snorkel, the essential piece of gear. Can't do it without this. It's where it all starts. We quickly learned, as you can see, the first picture, this is a very cold Dan.
Very cold.
Very cold water, so we quickly got a wetsuit, got a hood, to protect your head, protect your ears, as well as gloves and boots. Just cover your body as much as possible in neoprene, stay warm as you can. That quickly evolved into all sorts of other things. Fins, if you're swimming in a deeper pool, there's some shallow areas, but when you're in deeper water, you'll want to be able to move a little bit faster. Fins help a lot.
Also find that fins help not just for propelling you upstream against current, but they kind of help you keep your feet up. They float a little bit closer to the surface with fins, kind of like a water spider, you know, how they spread out. And so you're not dragging your feet and stirring up whatever sediment might be there.
Another thing we quickly got was a GoPro, why we were able to show you a lot of this footage here. And show them the wrist mount. This mount in particular allows you to kind of use your hand still while being able to focus the camera in a pointed direction without having to hold anything and leave you free.
Yeah, I feel like an underwater Iron Man when I'm going down, right?
It records sound as well.
Yep,
does.
sound and video.
Yep, it's totally waterproof, gets the sound. It's quite meditative when you just hear the flowing of the water. But yeah, it's a great tool. And because we are not photographers, video editors, we just strap this on our hand and all of a sudden we have the power of video in very extreme environments.
So as you gather more stuff, you want to carry it down the river with you. We learned about some waterproof bags you can either use this as more of like a hip belt, or this is a backpack, also waterproof. Carry extra GoPro batteries, spare gear, whatever you need. Also, snorkeling, you see a lot of trash. It's one of the biggest things, unfortunately, that you see. So we invested in some trash bags. And this is actually sold as a lobster bag. It got terrible reviews. No one likes it. Lobsters crawl out. Trash doesn't crawl, so it works great. And we got this as a recycled out of old billboards. This is really nice. It goes around your hip, little side mount, straps your leg. I use it more for a flashlight holder now, so I can have that ready, and I hold a water bottle. You get thirsty on the river. It's not always the cleanest to drink straight out of the river. Also, seeing fish, we decided to get some nets so we can try and catch what you can. There's all sorts of
Technically, I've caught a trout with that. Very small trout, but I caught a trout with that.
And when you catch baby fish, you want to look at it. So we bought a little box so you can dump them in there and really get a good perspective of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So a changing robe, this took us a while to get. Changing in a dirty parking lot, you get all your gear covered in dirt. This, you can really protect yourself.
You're not mooning innocent people that just happen to be out there for a walk.
As well as a changing mat, something to stand on. You can drop your gear, it's not in the gravel or in the mud. These two were small purchases, but made a huge difference in our comfort level of snorkeling.
Yes.
I guess I got off the hard way.
Yes, very many hard times.
There's a saying, follow your blisters, and I think that's definitely what we did. Every trip you come back with some sort of blister, and it's like, there's probably something we can buy to make that blister not be here next time, and so that's how we get
I don't think we went on a single trip that we didn't find ways to upgrade or something new that we could, what if we could do this differently and evolve. It's been evolving, it still evolves. There's never been a trip we've gone on where we haven't learned something new about how to do what we do differently.
Every trip results in a shopping list at the end of it, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry,
Dedicated to you, Ray.
Another big thing was just containers. It's like when you get out of the river, you're wet, you're soaking.
Yep.
This holds water really well. You don't want to just throw that in the back seat of your car while you're wet.
This saves your car. At that first week-long trip we went on, we did not have one of this, so after we got out of the river, all of this wet stuff just got piled in the back of my car, and after maybe 1 day, 2 days, unless you were one of us, you did not want to sit in that car. It was
not pleasant.
River fragrance.
Another thing we have trouble with is we usually bring a canopy, a pop-up canopy, 10 by 10. Hanging our gear up when we get back to camp to dry is tough. There's a lot of it. It adds up. So I've been working on a system to put it all in one. Hang your wetsuit, gloves, boots, and some carabiners to hang fins, your snorkel mask, a bag, So this will evolve, but it's the rudimentary version.
Selling that on Amazon.
Yeah. It's only $100 a piece, really.
Yeah. You know, when we think a real rite of passage for being a river snorkeler is when you are snorkeling for so many consecutive days that you have to get into a wet wetsuit, right? It's one thing to like go in there, get wet, hang it up dry, come back a couple weeks into a nice dry wetsuit. But when you are getting into a wet wetsuit, that is the rite of passage. You are real in it. We originally just recently inducted 2 more into the snorkeling squad that had the pleasure of getting into the wet wetsuits. Yep.
It's just the beginning, Dana.
Another random piece of gear that is really valuable is Contigo coffee mug, the one that is leak proof. All right, and so this has like a dual locking system, so it locks and you press the button. This, you can fill it up with hot coffee, lock it in there, throw it in this bag. The feeling of sitting in the middle of a river on a rock with water flowing around you, pulling this out and drinking hot coffee, if you haven't experienced it, it's something everyone should.
Yeah, the creature comforts.
Yeah. And it's funny, as I was going through and making some of the videos for this talk, we watched one clip from our initial trip down to Tennessee where we're getting in the river, we have all of our gear, we're prepped up, and we're like, oh, this is our final form. Look at us, we're evolved people. And sitting here now watching that, 2 years later.
This bottom picture.
Yeah.
That was
The
taken
final
at the end
form.
of end of that trip.
And I was just listening to myself in that video going, oh, you silly child. You don't even know. This is just beginning.
Yep.
A lot of gear you can get that is not meant to intimidate you or think, hey, the river is not accessible for you. If you ever go swimming in a river,
Yep.
bring this and your life will change. You will see things that you didn't even know were under there, a whole new world. You don't really know the river until you see below the surface. Another thing to point out is you don't have to go full wetsuit. I got, this is just a zip-up vest with a hood on it. It's sort of my convertible mode. If it's a nice day out and I just want a little bit of rash protection or it's warm enough to where it's not a frigid river, this is the easy option. Also, you can put this over a wetsuit if you really want to be cozy. And so there are plenty of options for making yourself comfortable to see this beautiful stuff that's under the water. So, is our neoprene ninja feet? What do you think about them?
These are pretty, about as basic as you can get. They make zip-up ones that have tread.
Yeah,
more heavy-duty boots that when you're getting into colder water, these are 2 millimeter, I believe, 3 millimeter. They have 5, 7, 9 millimeters.
And they're good because they're slim, so it's easy to fit your foot in and out of the fins. We're also a big fan of the Vibram 5 fingers. These have a little bit more of a tread on them, a little bit, more toe flexibility in action. All around, favorite river shoes right here. For snorkeling, definitely prefer these here.
The 5 fingers provide no insulation. It's very thin.
But any shoes you're willing to
feel
get wet will work. And I guess final note on these fins, the type we prefer have these, can I get it out of here? It's just one unit, right? So you don't have to mess with buckles and tightening stuff under the water. This is really easy to just slip on your feet or slip it off while you're in the river. Just quick donning and doffing of your gear makes for a better time. And I have no idea what the science behind the different shapes or anything was. Literally just got these because they were green and a cool color.
As is with most of our gear.
Yeah. Rule number 1 is do cool stuff. Rule number 2 is look cool doing it, right? Any questions about gear that we use? Gear that you've tried?
Well, could you hold up the changing robe? I'm looking at it from here, and I'm thinking,
It's just microfiber. It's really soft, really warm. It's great when you get out and you.
is that a pocket in front?
Yep, it's got a little kangaroo pouch style pocket. And a lot of the times when we get out at the end of the day, we'll just wear this to camp. And just the drive home with the windows down is much warmer wearing this than.
It's when we transition from river snorkeler to river wizards.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a kind of personal question, but do you
wear anything under the wetsuit?
Nope. No. That's a big help with this.
Cool, like,
No,
just
it's
to
personal
manage-
preference.
Yeah, I just don't, less wet stuff.
Yeah, and it's a little more uncomfortable if you have like shorts that are bunching up or like trying to keep everything
I saw a
flat.
video of a surfer and he was like, #1 mistake is that people wear things under their wetsuit.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they always say not to, so it's just.
Yep. This helps with that. It's like Dan said. Otherwise, you're mooning people on the side of the road as you're changing, and
Yes.
they already think you're weird because you're putting a wetsuit on next to a river. So
Yeah, and when we're doing these like longer trips where we're snorkeling many days in a row, we're not going inside afterwards. We're going to a campsite, and so just the less amount of wet things you have to manage when you're out camping, the better. So yeah, skin to wetsuit contact for the win.
Do you mind passing the book around?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure thing.
We'll make sure it gets back to you.
Yeah.
would you like to take a look?
Yeah, it's a great book. It covers not just locations, but also talks about some of the fish and like the value of freshwater biodiversity. It's through an organization called Freshwater Illustrated, and Casper, the guy that made this, he doesn't receive any profits from buying it. It all goes to Freshwater Illustrated and to support clean, healthy rivers and the biodiversity that's in it. So great book, makes for an even better vacation. Any other gear, equipment related questions? Yeah.
How, when you're all your gear in the river, how do you keep yourself from getting entangled with all the sticks and stuff in the river?
You really don't see too many like sticks that'll actually like grab you. If there is a tree that's down, you're pretty well aware that it's coming, so you can maneuver around it. And a lot of this gear is made to stay tight to the body.
Because we've done
Yeah.
a lot of canoeing, and I always think when you go dump and you get into the river, you don't want
Yeah.
to get entangled.
Yeah, the
Great.
trash bag is probably the loosest thing, so
Yep.
something could grab that, but it untangles pretty easily. Most everything else is very tight and
To your body.
yep.
And I'd say one of the other big advantages of snorkeling with all this gear as opposed to when you're canoeing or kayaking is just the side of the surface you're on, right? When you're in a kayak or canoe, everything below is more or less obscured from you. So when you suddenly, the river decides, hey, you wanted to paddle today, you're going to swim instead, whatever's there catches you by surprise. So it's really easy to get caught up in it.
Around the stuff.
Right, but when your eyes are already under the river and you see where you're going, it's not as easy to get wrapped up.
Yep.
And so, go for it.
You guys don't wear a helmet or anything like
Yeah.
that? Just wondering.
No.
Yeah.
We say eyes first, but technically it's like fingers first, eyes second. But a lot of these, the river or the rapids you saw us going down, we do not just like, okay, let's swim down this and do it. A lot of times we will start at the bottom of a stretch of river and go upstream. And we'll see how the water is going to make sure there's not a stick, just like Indiana Jones spike waiting for us.
Yep.
But yeah, helmets would probably be a little bit safer, but then you can't dive.
Yeah. And also, we do some big rapids, but nothing too crazy. Certainly nothing that people take kayaks down. There's some extreme like waterfalls and stuff like that. We keep it pretty tame.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the beauty of this is there are no rules. There's no rule book or guide. It's kind of, do you think you can do it? Then try it. And if you don't, then wait and build up to it. But an important part is to really look at what you're doing first before you just go in and
Eyes
go
first.
blind. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, make sure there's no obstructions, nothing you'll get caught on, and you'll have a safe passage through, and then once you know that, and have fun.
Yeah. And so it's a great transition into let's look at what it actually, let's see what we can see under the river, right? I think it's interesting with all this gear, from research on perception, right? It shows that we perceive our environment in terms of the capabilities for action that we have available to us. So if you go in the water without all this gear, it appears a certain way to you, right? It appears dangerous or foreboding or something that, it's just, you can get injured easily. As soon as you put this mask on, it is amazing how the perception of the river changes because now it's not unknown to you. You see exactly where things are and what's going on. As soon as you put that wetsuit on, you realize, oh man, I can go anywhere here. I can go through faster moving stuff because if I skid against a rock, it's not going to hurt. And so the gear really does help you see the river differently. And so it is an important piece of all this. But let's take a look at what it actually looks like underneath the surface. And so first thing to note is that our recipe for paradise has 3 main ingredients: water, trees, and rocks. If you smash as much of that as you can into a small area and bake it with sunlight, that's what we consider paradise, right? And so one of the most common questions we get when people see us or hear about us snorkeling is, oh, what do you see under there? And my favorite answer is, well, we see a lot of rocks and we see some water. And we're serious about that because it's some of the most beautiful sights. This is underneath a waterfall where you can see how the water dumps in and has a bottom to it. It has a depth to it. It doesn't end at the surface. The rocks, it's like a bunch of gems. It's like a treasure chest of just different colors and textures and shapes. The ceiling of the surface above you just ripples and catches light in this amazing way. In fact, it can be kind of surprising at times because you can get so focused looking down at the rocks that you don't really see the changes in the water surface. And all of a sudden you just drift into a rapid and it feels like an invisible hand just kind of grabs you and throws you forward. And all of a sudden you're flying like Superman, rocks just rushing past, and it's a beautiful, amazing feeling. But the world under there is just one marked by motion. It's dynamic. It is constantly changing. This is actually a Gunpowder River as well. And the thing this video doesn't capture is that everything is moving. So the entire time when you're here, you're not just seeing all this motion, but every inch of your body, it just feels stuff running across it. It's like getting massaged everywhere, constantly, nonstop for the entire time you're in the water. Many times afterwards, after a day of snorkeling, when we go back to the campsite and I lay down in the hammock or lay down in the tent at night, I can still kind of feel my skin tingling from just that continuous massage that it feels, that it gave me. Another really fun thing to do in the river that has nothing to do with any of the things living in there is just getting in a good flow, grabbing a rock and just kind of letting your body go loose and just kind of literally floating there, letting the river push you back. It kind of feels like you're just gently getting stretched, and it's a very peaceful, meditative experience. Is anyone familiar with the concept of isolation tanks or float tanks? They're getting a little bit more popular now. In a way, I think it has the same effect, where it just kind of helps you zone out, but with the opposite method. Whereas an isolation tank removes all stimulation, this just like, oh, you want stimulation, and turns the knob up to the max. But still, it just helps you zone out, tune into your surroundings, and just look and see about what's going on.
So as Dan was saying, a lot of people, when they ask us, what do you see? We say water and rocks, and it's slightly in jest because obviously you see water and rocks in a river. But it is the most important part of a river because when you go out into a forest and you see 2 tulip poplars, they're not the same tree. They have different angles, different branches, and the water in the rocks is literally the makeup of the river. It is what gives it its shape, its form, its flow, how much water, and that can vary quickly. One day the water's up, next day the water's down. 2 completely different experiences when you get in eyes first. So to see even just in 100 feet of the same river, it's a whole different world. So it is the most important makeup of what you're really experiencing when you get in the water.
Yeah, like this is the river, right? Not just the surface of it or what you see from a
the life
distance.
inside of it.
This is the river itself. It's also really fun to go upstream against the current. It's kind of like a horizontal rock climbing. We call it our aquanaut training because it feels like when you start sending astronauts to water planets, some other solar system, this is the kind of stuff they'll do on Earth to prepare for that, right? Because it is, instead of gravity always forcing against you to make you fall down off the wall you're climbing, there's just this constant force pushing you that way, and just learning to, all right, where are my handholds? How can I move up this river? And interestingly enough, I found that acting like a fish really helps you because you get to see where there are pulls and eddies behind big rocks where it's like, oh, there's a big force going this way, but if I just launch myself and jet behind that rock, it'll be calmer and I can rest before finding the next one. So in getting in their environment, very quickly you start to adapt to it, much like the things that live there do.
Yep. And if you are a fisherman, getting into the river, you will you'll be a much better fisherman when you get out because you can really see how the
Yes.
fish interact and where they settle and how they flow through the different rapids or eddies, and is very noticeable patterns that they have.
Yeah, I think kind of naively before looking underwater with the snorkel, I kind of just thought like, all right, once you get underwater, it's all the same there. It's just this large, nondescript body of water and fish are just sprinkled throughout it, right? But then you realize that no, fish have different habitats within that. Like, are they in the fast-moving water? Are they in the flows? Are they hiding in the little crevices in the rocks? And so you really get to see that, yes, fish live in rivers, but more specifically, they live in specific locations in rivers. And so learning to actually see that is a quite beautiful thing. And so, yes, of course, the next big thing we see when we go in rivers are the fish that live there, right? So soon after, we started really getting into exploring, using river snorkeling as a way of exploring. We came across an organization called the North American Native Fish Association, NAMFA. And it's an organization dedicated to protecting, educating, conserving native fish in our country. And I followed them on Facebook, and they posted the schedule for their annual conference. Was this last year, 2 years ago?
Yep, 2022.
Yeah, so last year, and we saw that Casper Cox, the guy that made the Hidden River book, was giving a talk at this conference called The DNA of an Aquanaut, an Aquanaut's DNA.
Yep.
And we're like, okay, we're traveling. We're going to meet this guy. We want to see
Instantly
him.
bought plane tickets.
Yeah, instantly. It's like this guy just more or less hijacked our last 2 summers from a distance, right? So we need to meet him and tell him what he's done to us. And so we went there. It was great. We got to meet Casper. But also we met this organization there called Rough Fish, which really introduced us to this idea that there's this division within fish known as game fish and rough fish, also known as trash fish or coarse fish, etc. And so most of the fish people tend to be familiar with are the bass, the trout, the sunfish, catfish, the things that people will fish for and eat. Everything else is considered rough fish or these fish of little value, which might not seem like a big issue, but then when you look at how much this distinction impacts some of the regulations around preserving fish in the river, it becomes quite an issue because the majority of fish that are called rough fish are actually the native fish that are in that river. However, there's I think the majority of states, and Thea, maybe you can correct us here, most states don't have bag limits for rough fish. So where like you can go in for white suckers or hog suckers, or I know a bunch of gar species on there, you could stack piles of fish on the riverside and just leave them there, kill them, and there's no issue with that, right? And so the fish that we put in rivers, or some of them are native, but the fish that we put in rivers to fish for often have more protections than the fish that actually belong in the river, and that is their home. And so when you go to a river with the perspective of fishing, this distinction emerges. When you go to the river eyes first, this distinction disappears. The rough fish are the more beautiful ones, they're the more plentiful ones, they're the more varied ones, and you really get to gain the appreciation for all of the fish that are under there. And I would argue a better classification rather than game fish and rough fish would be native fish, introduced fish, and invasive fish. Really, let's look at the river based on the way the system works rather than these purposes or categories we impose on it based on our needs and the way we're trying to use the river.
Yeah. And the rough fish are also, some of them are edible. When we were at NAMFA, the rough fish organization, they had red horse and white sucker. And they're just making little balls, and they were using Old Bay, which people thought was weird, which we enjoyed. It was delicious. I've never tried it before then, but they do have more value than what is perceived.
And also in the river, there are lots of very, very small fish.
Yeah, so the microfish really caught us right from the beginning. These are some shiners, minnows. They're all in the same family. They all congregate in big pools. When you're climbing around and stir stuff up, they come and eat the little plankton and algae and whatever bits they can find that you stir up. So they're always like, these are your friend. They follow you around wherever you're at in the river.
Yeah, your fan club.
Yep, and it's fun to see. And there's tons of them. As you can see, there's dozens, and they'll be wherever you are. You can wash a little dirt away, and they'll come in and swarm quickly. Another big one that we came to love was darters. They're related to like perch and roughies. Little tiny fish, they get 2 to 5 inches. That's a sculpin, but so these fish, they vary like wildly
darter
across the
right there?
country. Yep. Yeah, the top left is a darter. So you have some that are like endemic to certain rivers, even within very close ranges. You'll find huge variety. These fish, they don't have swim bladders, so you see them, they'll sit on the bottom. Anytime they're actually moving through the water is just through propulsion. But they dart, which is how they get their name.
Aptly named.
And this is why we got our nets, so we could catch these darters. And it's tough sometimes, but it's a lot of fun when you get one. They also, during breeding season, the males produce very bright colors, blues, reds, greens. And, so when you find something like that, you bring it out of the water and it looks like a rainbow. It's a beautiful thing to see, and obviously the fun of catching it and the hunt.
Yeah, to me, the reason I like the darters so much is because it basically creates like a river scavenger hunt. Because like Dylan said, there are so many of them. I think it's like 200,
Yeah,
over
it's a little over
200
200
different
different
types of
species.
darters in the United States. And I think they might only be in North America as well, so definitely some local pride there. Because they're so diverse, they will adapt to very specific watersheds and drainages. And so when you go, like for example, we went to Monongahela National Forest earlier this year and found what's called the candy darter, which only exists in the basin, the drainage right there. And so you can only see this beautiful, colorful fish if you go to the rivers in that drainage. And so it's really fun, to go to different rivers and just be like, all right, what darters are we going to find here? But then also, once you're in the water, just like searching through the rocks and just like at first you won't see any, and then you'll see one. And it's like, oh man, I found a darter. And then the first one shows up, and then you just start to see that they are everywhere, all throughout the rocks. So this was a nice collection of a couple of them, and they're just real fun fish, small, cool to watch. I think if I was a fish, I would choose to be a darter, just to hang out, play in the rocks rather than just float around and look at stuff. But
these can also, you can find these in the gunpowder. I believe there's 4 species that survive in the gunpowder. Most recently, we found some at Glencoe, just north of the bridge, just upstream.
Beautiful fish, types of fish people that if you're just familiar with the kind of fish that you can catch on a line and eat, may have never even heard about darters. But just again shows the variety and the beauty that is in the river once you go under the surface and start looking to see what is actually in there. And then when we were at the NANFA conference, we met a guy, Tim Aldridge, who has a group called Microfishing. And so there is a whole movement out there of people that do fish for these little tiny guys with just a fish and a line. I don't know if this is technically cheating or not,
stick.
but they have life lists where they try to catch as many of these as possible. And we were snorkeling in a river where he was trying to microfish. He was looking for, was it black-nosed darter?
Yep.
And we found one snorkeling.
And a rainbow.
And he said, oh, that's one I need. And Dylan held the line right in front of the darter.
He caught it.
He caught it, but snorkeling assisted. This is down in Hawaii, one of the special darters. It's called a tangerine darter. Beautiful, bright orange. But then this line on the top of their fin, it doesn't fully come across in the video just how bright that is. If you have ever seen like a luminescent night sight on like a pistol sights or something like that, it just has that. It catches the light and just glows. It seems like it's like an LED glowing light. These are log perch related to the darters. Beautiful tiger stripes on them, and they will. They're kind of cool because they mess around with the rocks. And sometimes they will actually pick them up and move quite large rocks to find out, find food underneath it. Lots of
very friendly fish. You can get very close to these, and they won't move too much.
Yeah, I haven't caught log perch yet in a net. Just a little bit beyond the
they're
the
typically
size.
a little bigger, a lot faster. And if you don't get them, if you don't really trap them in between rocks, they'll disappear, and you'll never see where they go.
Yeah.
So this is the Maryland darter, which is considered one of the rarest darters in the entire world. It hasn't been seen since 1988. It was in Deer Creek, and the last time I was seen, there's 2 other places Gashby's Run, I want to say. is where they're found. In 1965, there was about 70 individuals that have been recorded by I think it was a University of Maryland biologist. In 1988, they were down to one little riffle, and they found one darter, and said hasn't been seen since. They believe it could still exist, but we don't really know. So if you're in the Deer Creek area and you want to check it out, or any Susquehanna tributary, it's where they would be. So that would be quite the goal to be able to find one of those.
This, personally, the Maryland darter helped highlight some of my own irrational thinking, because as soon as I learned about this, it's like, oh, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to get famous because we're going to go snorkeling and we're going to see this, and we're going to be the ones to find it. Again, scientists have been looking for this for years,
Yep.
but apparently, we're not. Like I said,
Yeah.
not going to claim to always be rational, but again, it's
We'll
it's that
try. We'll certainly try.
river scavenger hunt, right?
Yeah.
Just a cool thing. Like, hey, let's go out, see what we can see what we can find, and maybe we'll find something really rare.
So these are some other creatures that you'll see in the river. These two snake pictures were taken just at Hillbilly Beach. There's a big rock right across the river that people jump off of. This was directly underneath of that. But don't worry, they're not very harmful. Just don't try and pick them up. They will try and bite you if you do that. Some crayfish, turtles, plenty of beaver. And I'm going to show you a video. I use this as a PSA, is when you are using your GoPro, you have a memory card in here. When you are done, you come home, back up your footage. Because I lost this GoPro, and what you're going to see is a recording of my computer. So it's not original quality. This took me about 5 weeks at Big Falls Road, just by the bridge, and I was in the water 5 to 6 times a week. So I have to go back to get that again. This is all that remains.
Just to pile on Dylan a little
Yep.
bit more to make the burn of his mistake extra intense. We also had footage of the candy darter on that camera
Yep.
when he lost it. So.
Yeah, I had the beaver. I had a couple trips, but I had our Monongahela trip with the candy darter and some variegated darters, and that all slid off the roof of my car quite quickly and unbeknownst to me. So.
But that's why cameras are just a backup for your eyes, because theme of the night, eyes first. We got to see it. It
Yep.
was cool. We'll hopefully see
memories
him again
exist.
because we had the gear. Yep. Also, I think just want to point out the snake issue, right? That's another one of the most common questions we get. It's like, oh, what about snakes? Aren't you afraid of getting like eaten by snakes and piranhas and stuff like that? And again, once you go under the surface and see with your own eyes what's under there, you realize that so much of this fear is based on just not knowing what's down there. When you see it and you spend as much time as we do in rivers, I think this is the only time we've seen a snake.
Yeah, they're very seldom. They're very
That's a rare
afraid
sight.
of your presence. They
Yeah.
will disappear faster than you can see them.
Yeah, there's no Loch Ness monster waiting under there, under the that dark rock to get you once you get close enough. Only cool stuff exists under the water when you start looking for it.
That's a common water snake, non-poisonous.
Yep, northern water snake. They do have anticoagulant when they bite you, so you will bleed. But if you're not picking them up and handling them, they're not going to bite you. They'll run away. This was the Hellbender. This was it. This was the trophy.
Kind of at it.
Yeah, I got a tattoo. You can find one at these coordinates right here in Tennessee.
We take it serious.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this was part of Casper's book. This was one of the sections was the Hellbenders, the largest salamander in North America, largest amphibian, and the third largest salamander in the entire world. And just a rare sight to see. And so obviously we're like, well, we got to go find one. And it spurred our first vacation and many other vacations since then. And after 3 years of searching, we found, not right away. Yeah.
It took 3 straight summers
Yep.
of constantly snorkeling to see this one. And then we
Yep.
have snorkeled a lot since then and have not been able to find it.
Yep. And
This was the Hiwassee.
Yep, Hiwassee River. And we've kind of tailored our snorkeling trips into regions where the Hellbender would exist, just because it's a fun activity to do, and if you have the ability to see the Hellbender while you're doing it, it's just a icing on the cake.
Yeah. So historically, these existed all across the Appalachian Range, right? Now they are incredibly rare because their habitats have shrunk, right? The southeast, they're still pretty common, especially in drainages that go to the west of the mountains into the Mississippi River rather than into the Atlantic or any of the rivers to the east. But it's shrinking. the Loyalsock up in the Susquehanna headwaters there. There's still a potential hellbender population there. One of the local colleges is doing a lot of conservation work. And potentially there are still a hellbender population in Harford County around the mouth of the Susquehanna. I know there is an organization that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head that is doing research and using eDNA to see if the hellbenders might still be around there. But that is so exciting for us because that's less than an hour from here, and we could see these things that we have been snorkeling all over the place.
Yep. Yep. Cold, clean, flowing water. And hellbenders have existed for over 65 million years, so they've been around for a while. When they don't travel far, when they find a rock to live under, they stay under that rock, and they don't travel more than a mile, so like half a mile in either direction. They're very localized. They don't really cross paths with other hellbenders in the area, so to see one is quite the feat. They're different kind of salamanders. They breathe through their skin. They have capillaries on their sides.
Yeah, these little flaps is actually they're filtering air through the water to breathe, so they don't bring it in.
So the more surface area that water can move across, the more oxygen they can absorb. No gills. When they're babies, they have gills, but they disappear as they get older. They also have light receptors in their skin, so when they crawl under a rock to make sure they're hidden, they can tell if their tail is being hit by sunlight. They're very aware of their surroundings. They have a really good sense of smell. It's how they go after prey. Is they'll crawl upriver and
So just
things out.
specific shout out.
Yeah,
The
it's Casper
feet you
up
see right
there.
here is Casper Cox. It was sort of a story that writes itself.
Oh, he stood there while we dove down to try and get footage of the hellbender under the rock. He had a stick that he would just hold us down,
see it.
put in the center of your back. Didn't tell us this. He just did it. So when you're like 8 feet underwater and someone's just like pushing you down, it's a little startling.
Yeah, but it was a cool moment in this journey we've been on, right? Because as soon as we got into this and we started looking it up, like Casper was the first name to come up, right? Like we literally used his guide to plan our trips and like to get into this. And then it was cool meeting him at the NAMFA conference, and we exchanged contact info, and we went back down there. He's like, hey, like come snorkel. Like
He knew the spot.
We knew the spot. He's like, you'll probably see one here. And so we met up with Casper, and our very first time snorkeling with him after 3 summers of looking for it. The snorkel master leads us right to the hellbender.
Yep, he is the guru.
Yeah, it was. We've done a lot of cool stuff in the rivers, right? Had a lot of great times, seen a lot of really beautiful things. This was just the cherry on top of all of it. I remember Casper saw it first, and I was closest to Casper, and he was like, oh, I got one. I saw it, and I looked up, and I was just like, where is Dylan? And I
was far away.
We didn't talk about the signal, but the only signal I could think of was just make as much noise and movement as possible. Just like, just, Dylan. And I think it was pretty effective. 'Cause as soon as we made eye contact,
so fast.
he got there
Knew right away.
very quick. Yeah. But not only is the hellbender cool because of its rarity, but I also like to think of it as sort of the sentinel animal, or the token animal of these environments that we care so much about. Because the hellbender needs cool water that's fast flowing with gravelly, rocky bottoms. All right, those are the best environments to snorkel in as well. And if a hellbender is in a river, that is a great bioindicator of the quality of the health of that river. Right, and so it's a cool animal. It represents our favorite environments, right? The water, trees, and rocks with sunlight. But unfortunately, it is very, very threatened, right? And so that's kind of how, as we've gone through these experiences of looking under the surface, going eyes first, searching for things like hellbenders and darters and all the other fish there, it's inevitable that you start to think about the bigger picture, right? Because the river is the place where so many different sciences and interests intersect, right? You got geology, forestry, fishology, insectology, whatever those are.
Theology.
Yeah, ichthyology, there we go. It's all there in the river for you to see. And then you start realizing, like, all right, well, if I want to keep doing this, we need to make sure these rivers stick around. And not only just maintain what we have, but how can we restore some of the rivers now that are overly sedimented and have lost their forested buffers on the stream banks? How can we restore some of that to not only just snorkel with what we have available today, but to be able to go snorkeling in places that aren't really suitable now in the future, right? And so it really does bring you eyes first face to face with one of the biggest environmental challenges that we're facing right now. Surprisingly, I think to a lot of people, they might not realize that the greatest loss in global biodiversity is in freshwater systems. All right, I think I was reading the World Wildlife Federation put out a report a couple years ago about general global biodiversity and found that since 1970 something, overall biodiversity has decreased by about 64%, but for freshwater species, its decrease has been 80-some%. All right, and I think one of the reasons why this isn't as talked about or managed of an issue is because of how hidden it is. There's this water barrier that prevents people from seeing exactly what's happening and how these systems are being degraded. A couple weeks ago, I was down in Southwest Virginia at a naturalist conference, and a guy named Mike Pinder from the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources gave a talk on freshwater fish and made a good analogy. He said, you know, people love birds because there's a beautiful variety of them. They migrate. There's always different birds you can see. But you can set up a bird feeder outside your window, and when you're making your coffee in the morning, you can look out and see the birds, right? So when birds start disappearing, you can notice it day to day. And he just posed the question of, if we could have fish feeders outside of our house and see the variety of fish that are just as close to us as the birds are, would we treat them differently? Would we take more action to protect them and you know, make sure that these species stick around? Which I think, again, going eyes first, looking at them, seeing this variety, as soon as you see it, you say, yes, I want to keep this. It would be a real shame if we lost this valuable natural resource. So,
That soundtrack made me think of diving with an aqualung. Do you use aqualungs under the river?
I'm not familiar. What's
It's compressed air.
Oh, no, we haven't.
Yeah, so the majority of the rivers that we snorkel in, you can stand up in, and it's only about waist deep, right? And so we haven't used any air tanks. Usually luckily, the air is readily available for us. There are some deeper sections where it's kind of fun to dive down, which also the tank would create a bit of an issue, I think. So we haven't, but I think it probably is only a matter of time until we try scuba. But
it would be cool just to sit at the bottom of a pool to look around, not have to resurface every 10 seconds. And
yeah, I think the danger of going scuba, starting to get into the scuba world, I think we're already pretty amphibious. We might fully turn into marine creatures at that point.
Also, you need a lot of money to get into that. That's not cheap gear, and we get into it.
Just the sound, though. I mean, most of the videos we muted it because it's just a very repetitive flowing water sound, but it is so meditative. Like when you sit there and you're just looking at everything that's going around and listening to the sounds and feeling, it is, again, 100% total mind stimulation of what's going on, and it is a great experience to get into. So with the importance of these freshwater systems globally, right? Fixing the whole world probably out of our reach, but everywhere in the country, you know, like this is a country of rivers, right? We're very fortunate for the rivers that we have, and whether you have spent time in or near the river recently or not, what you do on land impacts what's happening in the river. So whether you see the river in your day-to-day life or not, you are interacting with this resource, right? And we're lucky enough here to have the Gunpowder River Keepers, Gunpowder Valley Conservancy, a whole bunch of other organizations dedicated to protecting these specific waters that we depend on here and the natural resource that's right outside our back doors. So this is a number of different ways that you can get involved locally here. Aaron is the coordinator for a lot of the volunteer efforts. So here's your email. I think there's a sign-up list. If you're not getting the newsletter, sign up for that. She'll shoot out ways to get involved. Aaron, would you like to speak about the newsletter or give a pitch for that real quick?
Well, I'm the volunteer coordinator, but if anyone's interested in volunteering, please write down your email. We do a lot of stream walks, Theo does, and also cleaning up along the trail here as well. So if you would like to, please email me, let me know what your interests are, and I can arrange a day to volunteer.
That's awesome. Please do. I know we started carrying trash pickers and bags just when we were kayaking, when we go snorkeling. Just, we started with picking up trash, which I think is one of the more obvious and immediate things you can do, but with the organization that is available here, the impact can go a lot further. So no, I'm excited to get out there and help in new ways. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And I know, Theo, you've been doing a lot of action about holding people accountable for what they do to our waters. Would you like to speak on that?
Not tonight.
Okay, not tonight. But just know that not everyone cares about our rivers being healthy as we do. So fortunately, the Gunpowder Riverkeeper organization has our backs, protecting our water. They're making sure that if somebody is negligent for our water, that they're not going unnoticed and that they will have to pay for it. So get involved, get on the newsletter to stay up to date.
Yep.
Question?
Couple of questions. One, is there a time of day that you find it's the best for snorkeling? And the second question is, are there different lenses for the masts so that the different densities of the water?
Time of day is really any time, any daylight. It's easier to see. The hellbender is partially nocturnal, so we got flashlights pretty quick. You can see pretty far with a good flashlight. They do make masks with different lenses that are higher contrast or polarized. Yeah. But we've only used a couple of them. We found the filters that they have on the mask kind of take away from what you're really seeing in the river. Yeah. So there might be certain specific situations depending on the light that they would be better, but overall, when you're spending hours at a time in the river, you're going to find that specific situation very infrequently. So just having just a clear, unadulterated mask we found is the best solution. Just see what it offers.
And I'd say in time of day, also the river that you're going in depends a lot. Some of these rivers are in pretty steep gorges, and so if you go like too early or too late, you're not getting direct light into it, so there are more shadows under the rocks or places for things to hide that you can't see. Flashlights solve that, but you just have to search for it a little bit more. Going around noon or like midday-ish when the light's right above you, not only does it help you see more of the river bottom, but also just the vision of the view of the light filtering through the water itself is a very amazing experience to encounter. So all days are cool. Going in the midday, you'll probably see the most. Yep. So guys, thank you so much for your question.
Yes, you didn't mention eels.
Oh, awesome. I did forget. So we saw eels in Octoraro Creek, which is just across the Susquehanna by like
Conowingo.
Yeah, like just below the dam, like kind of like Havre de Grace area, I believe.
Yeah.
And so we saw a couple eels there, and I knew nothing about eels until I saw it, and I was like, this is something new, right? And I learned that dams are actually hugely impactful on eel populations because they spawn somewhere out in the ocean, come back, I think, in their adult lives to filter up into the rivers as far as they can, and that's where they live their lives. And then when it's time to spawn again, they go back out into the ocean. But dams prevent them from accessing their native ranges. And so.
Somebody caught one at the Glencoe Bridge like 30 years ago.
Oh, really?
Fish there every week.
I've never seen an eel in the Gunpowder.
Fascinating.
I've seen one up the little dam at the Gunpowder.
Huh.
Actually, when it's wet, they'll wiggle way up.
Oh man, we're gonna have to start looking for them then. Fascinating. Did you know, are they still out? Are they still out here? Yeah? Oh man.
It's not looking hard enough.
Yeah.
They need bigger eyes.
See this thing, you go eyes first and your eyes get bigger and bigger with each trip. Learn to see more and more stuff. So.
Yep. The bigger your eyes, the more you see. The more you see, the bigger your eyes
Thanks
get.
for giving us a new mission.
Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome.
How about mollusks? Or do you spend much time looking at?
Yeah, they're very frequent in the rivers. Not so much in the Gunpowder as much as some of the other ones we've seen, but they are out there. It's not something we've really researched as much, but I think it is the next step because there's a lot more species of mollusks than I've ever realized, and they are great filters for the water. They provide a great job for cleaning the water, and so they play an important role.
Yeah.
Do you all report any of what you found? Just
we haven't yet. We've discussed like iNaturalists, just reporting like the hellbender, stuff like that. But when you go and you see a rainbow trout in the Gunpowder, it's not a cause to raise alarm. You're like, hey, look at this.
Yeah, I mean, really up until this year, this was just something we did for fun. You know, it was just, hey, we have free time. We want to spend some time outside. let's go camping, drink some beer, get in the river. And it was only until this year where we really, the big picture really started clarifying in our mind, and we realized that not only is this a fun thing to do, but it can be a very meaningful activity and something that can have a bigger impact. And so that's what we're starting to focus on now. Our jobs are nothing related to environmental sciences or fish or anything. And so again, this is all just stuff we do, spend our time doing. But I think there are opportunities for us to, create a record of this stuff, do actual formal surveys, or get involved with bigger organizations to make sure that these environments are there for us to keep enjoying. And so, well, happy to answer any more questions, but thank you so much for your time, your attention that you gave us today.
Thank you very much.
If you'd like, this QR code here will send you to a Google Drive where we put a page on there that has further reading, some videos that you can watch, a link to our YouTube channel, the map, the gunpowder snorkel map. So if you want to get out there and snorkel, and some good spots to go for, so feel free to grab that on your way out. And
this also has a list of volunteer opportunities for Gunpowder River Keeper, so a one-stop shop for all you need to know.
Yes. Thank you guys again so much.
Thank you so much.